every shield. I love you in ways I can't explain, in ways I shouldn't. And it terrifies me. The tears Hannah had been holding back burned at the edges of her eyes. She leaned into Elena's touch, her resolve crumbling. Then why are we pretending this isn't real? Because Elena breathed. The world won't forgive us. He won't forgive me. And I don't know if I can forgive myself. Their lips met again, this time with a desperate urgency, as though kissing could silence the cruel truth pressing between them. It was a collision of hunger and sorrow, of love and fear. Hannah's hands clutched at Elena's damp shirt, pulling her closer, as though she could anchor her to this moment forever. When they finally broke apart, both gasping for air, Hannah rested her forehead against Elena's shoulder. "Even if it's only for tonight," she whispered, "don't leave me alone in this." Elena closed her eyes, her arms tightening around Hannah. "I don't want to. Not tonight." The storm outside roared louder, but within the small apartment, time stood still. The door was still open, the world still waiting to tear them apart. But for now, they chose to forget. For now, they chose each other. The night deepened, and with it, the tension in the room thickened like smoke. Elena's wet clothes clung to her body, her hair dripping onto Hannah's shoulder as they stood locked together, unwilling to let go. Hannah pulled back slightly, her hands brushing down Elena's arms. "You're freezing," she murmured. "Sit down, let me get you something dry." Elena shook her head, her gaze still fixed on Hannah's lips. "Don't," she whispered. "If you walk away, I'll lose the courage to stay." Hannah's breath caught. There was something so fragile about Elena in that moment, like she might shatter if touched too roughly. the consequences, Hannah replied honestly. But tonight, let's carry each other. Elena's eyes glistened with tears, but she nodded, surrendering to the pull that had consumed them both for far too long. She leaned into Hannah, kissing her deeper, fiercer, as if to drown out the uncertainty of tomorrow. Hours seemed to blur as they lost themselves in one another. Their intimacy grew not from haste, but from a need to be seen, to be touched, to be loved in a way that felt real. They whispered each other's names like secrets, like prayers, like vows they could never speak aloud in daylight. When exhaustion finally pulled them into silence, they lay together tangled in each other's arms. Hannah stroked Elena's hair, her heart aching with both joy and dread. She knew this couldn't last. She knew dawn would come too soon. But for the first time in months, she felt whole. And for the first time, Elena slept peacefully in someone's arms, not as Daniel's fiancée, not as the perfect woman the world wanted her to be, but as herself. The first light of dawn crept slowly into the room, pale and hesitant, as the truth rips through everything. Hannah closed her eyes, her hands sliding to forehead, her lips, trying to memorize every taste, every breath, every second before it slipped away. The kiss that followed was slow, unhurried, and devastating. It wasn't filled with urgency like the night before, but with the sorrow of knowing it had to end. Elena's hands trembled against Hannah's cheeks as if she didn't want to let go, but when she finally pulled back, tears streaked down her face. "I'll always love you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Even if I can't say it out loud. Even if I have to walk out that door." Hannah's eyes burned, but she forced herself to nod. "Then let me have this, Elena. One last kiss before you leave." Their lips met again, a final sealing of everything they couldn't keep. It was tender, lingering, filled with unspoken promises and inevitable heartbreak. When it ended, they held each other for a moment longer, as though delaying the inevitable. And then Elena stood, lifetime. The rain had started earlier than expected, a steady drizzle that blurred the city lights into smudges of gold and silver. Hannah sat curled up on her couch, a glass of red wine in hand, staring at the sliding balcony door she had forgotten to close. It rattled slightly in the wind, letting in the cool night air. She considered getting up to shut it, but the effort felt too heavy. Tonight, like so many nights lately, she wanted the world to come to her rather than chase after it. And that was when she heard it, a soft knock on the doorframe, followed by the faintest whisper of a laugh. She turned, startled, to see Elena standing there. Her hair was damp from the rain, clinging to her cheeks, and her blouse was slightly transparent under the thin fabric. "You left the door open," Elena said, her voice gentle but laced with something Hannah couldn't name. Hannah's heart stuttered in her chest. Of all the people who could have walked through that door, it had to be her. Elena. Beautiful, forbidden Elena. Her cousin Daniel's fiancée. The woman Hannah had tried and failed to forget. "I didn't think anyone would notice," Hannah replied. And seeping into every movement. Elena's hands tangled in Hannah's hair, pulling her closer, while Hannah's fingers traced the outline of Elena's damp blouse, feeling the warmth of her skin beneath. It was messy, unpracticed, charged with all the longing they had suppressed for so long. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. Elena pressed her forehead against Hannah's, her eyes closed, as if afraid to open them and see the truth of what they had done. "This is wrong," Elena murmured. "I know," Hannah said softly, "but it feels right." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The rain beat against the windows, steady and insistent, like a drum marking time they no longer had. Then Elena kissed her again, harder this time, and the night unraveled.